Hi, I'm Captain Mike, and I'm going to show you how to make inexpensive frit. It's really simple, but before we even get started, let's cover some very important stuff. When you're fooling with glass, especially glass that gets crushed up and powdered, you're going to definitely need a very good source of filtering your air. I use this right here, which is my one I paint stuff with, and I've had it a long time. It works great. It has replaceable filters. I recommend something like this. If you do not have something like this and you are forced to wear a paper mask, make sure you have cross ventilation, that you have a fan blowing across you. You might even want to do this outside, but you can do it in your shop. Just be aware that some dusty powder will settle on your stuff. Eye protection is always recommended when fooling with glass, and some sort of hand protection if you're worried about cutting yourself. Now, cloth gloves will work good. At a very minimum, you want to use rubber gloves. Now, I have 4 different grades of frit here that I have made. I'll mention at this particular point that I have never purchased any frit. That all the frit I have ever used in any of my projects is homemade frit. But you have to be careful. Do not mix your glass. If you're going to make 90 COE frit, make sure that's all that you're putting in the device that you're going to crush it with. Don't put 96 and 90 together. You could be asking for trouble or doing add bottle glass. But these are 4 different grades. This is powder, fine, medium, and very coarse. You may have even a coarser one than this. That's up to you. It is how much do you want to crush and filter to get where you want to go. But these are the standard. I don't know that these conform to regular frit, but they're close enough for me, and that's what I use. And the next thing you're going to need is a source of glass. And you probably, in fact, you will need to separate it by color first. If it's dirty like this, wash it, let it dry, then sort it. And in some cases you may have to break it into smaller pieces. Again, do not mix your COEs. Once you get it sorted, it should look something like this. A box like this weighs approximately 11 pounds, and just keep that in mind, between 10 and 11 pounds. I'll explain why just a little bit later. Now, you're going to need something to put your frit in as you crush it up, and this is what I use. Anything will work. I just use these. They come from Walmart. They're relatively inexpensive, and I like to keep them all looking more or less the same. But that's what I use to put my finished product in. Now you have your glass. You're going to need a way to crush it. Now, there are many, many ways to crush it, from putting it in a bag and smashing it with a hammer to purchasing one of these custom-made frit crushers. I've never used one of these, but I'll show you what I have in a minute. But you can purchase these. I will put the link below. It's an Amazon link, but other people sell this model. This is an interesting model that I found on a Delphi website. You might want to go there. I'll try to remember to put that website also. Somebody made this one. It's really, really simple. Use a piece of pipe the diameter that you want with an end cap on it. Another piece of pipe that is at least as long as this pipe plus enough to get your hand on, and put you an end cap on this. Simple as that. Pound it up and down. It will work. That's about as simple as it will get. Now, this is the one that I use. I made this one. It's very, very, very heavy. It's a big, huge piece of pipe with a piece of sheet metal or plate steel welded to the bottom. And it has a plunger on the end of it. And you can just pound the heck out of glass. But it is heavy. It's not for everybody. But I pound a lot of glass, and when I do, this is my go-to tool. And it has this little T-handle on it. It works great. Now, the other thing that you can use is a blender. This is really, really neat. but it has some shortcomings. But if you're wanting to do small batches, a blender is the way to go. Now, you put your glass in here, turn it on, very low speed, it'll beat it all up into various grades, and you sift it out, and it works absolutely fine. I've even been told that if you add a little water to it, that it won't wear the blades out quite as quick. Haven't tried that, so don't hold me to it. And I know you're asking yourself, well, what do you mean wear the blades out? Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. That's what one looks like more or less when you start. After you've did about 10 pounds of glass, remember I mentioned for you to remember the 10 to 11 pounds? After you've gone through a shoebox full, or about 10 pounds, your blades are going to look like that, and they're not going to be functioning very well. So keep that in mind. You will go through a lot of these things, and it may or it may not be the way to go for you. For tiny small amounts that you're just going to do a handful of frit, they are a way to go. I picked them up at Goodwill. I never pay over $5 a piece for them. But if you start picking them up, you can have a half a dozen or so around, and you need to make some frit. It's just an option, and an option I personally like. Some friends of mine also have one that's called a Frittenstein or something like that. They made one out of a garbage disposal, and it works great. I'll try to insert that picture in here. Now, the next thing you're going to need are some sifters. Now, I purchased this lot on eBay. Nope, that's not right. I purchased them on Amazon. I will put that link below. And they come in all kinds of grades, from coarse to this very, very fine one right there. And if you're going to use these, I don't think they sell a pan that fits in the bottom, so you'll need something like that at the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket. And you just simply you crush it up however you're going to crush it, in a bag with a piston crusher or with a blender. You pour it in here, shake the heck out of them, and as it goes through, it sorts them into different grades. Now here's the ones that I use. I made these. They're not difficult to make, but they do take some woodworking skills. But there are 4 different grades and a bottom pan to catch it. And it started off very, very simple. This is just 1/4-inch mesh wire. Buy it at any hardware store. Then you can get some screen wire, which is pretty big screen wire. And then you go on down to the smaller screen wire, also bought at a hardware store. And finally, the very fine mesh that I bought it at a local granite supply place. It has a specific purpose in the granite industry, but you can find it on eBay or on Amazon, and it's just a very fine mesh. I think it's like 300 or 400, I'm not real sure. And then of course the very powder is caught down here. Now, if you have no other choice, you can always just use inexpensive sifters. Find you a couple that are different mesh and sift it. I mean, that's really all you've got to do. You'll probably come up with the size frit you use the most if you look around, but that's the simple way to do it. We're going to make some frit using this blender. We're going to use the blender so I can show you how fast it is, and it'll just keep the time for this video down a little bit. I won't go through the other types that I use, but we're going to blend up some glass in this. I'm going to show you the dust that it makes, and then we're going to sift it, and that'll be it. You should be able to make your own. So the first thing I do is I take my glass. It should be clean glass. It's all the same COE, and I put some in this blender. Now, if all goes well, the blender will turn on and it will crush this stuff. If it doesn't, something will catch down here and I'll have to get it out. You'll see. Put your top on it and make sure you have your mask on. Okay, we're ready to go. Let's give this thing a shot, okay? Okay, you see what happened? Okay, there you go. Now when I first turned this on, if you noticed, it kind of hung. That's because a piece of glass was down between the bottom of the blades, but it turned loose. And I listened for the pitch to change in the glass. Now I'm going to take this off and you're going to see the dust. Hopefully you can see the dust come out. That's nasty stuff. And believe it or not, it's the dust you can't see that will get you. The dust you can see is bad enough. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pour this in here, get this video done. We're going to pour it in our sifter. I'm going to do just a little bit more because I want to make sure I've got enough to show you how it does. Put another handful in here. Okay. I'm going to hurry on this, so there's going to be dust. And we're going to do the last of it, and I'm going to show you how it sifts out. Yes, as you can see, it's nasty. You need cross ventilation. You need to do it outside and keep the dust off of your stuff. All right. Now, if you happen to have some magic marker or something on this, don't worry about it. That will burn off. Make sure you get the tape and all the other stuff off. If you have any kiln shelf stuff on the back of it, don't use that because that will not burn off. But once you've got your stuff ground up in your however you're going to grind it, and you just shake it, and you see we have coarse stuff here, really coarse, and I would normally do that over again. Just put it back in the blender or put it back in the crusher and reduce it further. And with an exception there, you have some what I call coarse. Some of the long pieces are going to go through that, and every once in a while you'll find a little piece of some color in there that you don't need. Pick it out now if you can, because if you don't, you're going to have to do it later. But see, this is your coarse. I don't use a lot of coarse. That's coarse, and that is medium, and this is your fine right there, and that is your powder. So you can't see that real good because there's not a lot of it, but once you do several pounds of this, you'll have enough. And all you have to do next is put it in your containers. Hopefully you'll have more than I have here, but I think you guys get the idea. It's that simple to do. You have Frit, and while I'm sorting this, I'm going to tell you that actually I did the math, and it is cheaper to buy a full sheet of glass, cut it up into strips, and reduce it to Frit than it is to buy Frit. There's work involved, and you have to consider the work all the time. But that's it. And that's my video on how to make Frit. If y'all have any questions, let me know.